Hi, guys. I'm Nina,
I'm Jamie.
I'm Ethan.
and we are Bloody Essentials. We just want to thank everybody who's already supported this podcast, whether it's just listening, liking, subscribing, sharing. It really means a lot to us, and it helps us out so much. So thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Rick Paulton, our Patreon. Thank you, Rick. You've been supporting us since before we were even a podcast, and we were just talking about it. So, thanks for listening every week, sharing your feedback, thoughts, buying merch from us, and just being an awesome human. So, we
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thanks. Thanks. You got good taste in the movies too, man.
Yes.
For sure. We appreciate that we've converted you to the dark side with Italian horror.
Yes, more to come too.
We have definitely put that on the back burner this year, and we need to fix that going into the new year.
I'm with you. Like, we definitely need more Italian horror on the schedule.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. We will
Yeah.
do it. All right. Tonight, we are doing something a little bit different. We've been meaning to do this for a while, but we've also been putting it on the back burner because it requires more research than our usual episodes. So get into something comfortable, slip into something comfortable because we're going to talk gruesome true crime cases. And we're going with some that have stood out to us in particular over the years, things that fascinate us, keep us on the edge of our seats every time we read something new about it. So we've each picked two and we're going to go around and discuss them. We won't get into all the gruesome details, but we will share some of the facts, important facts, and we'll leave it to you guys to do your research because that makes it more fun, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, with that being said, with this being a true crime episode and, these events did actually happen, we do want to put a little advisory out there for anybody that has their children listening or, young ones. Viewer discretion is advised. Not here to tell you how to parent, but just know that there are some graphic details that will be shared in this episode. So just be mindful of that going forward. That's your warning. That's it. So sorry if you don't listen. I tried to
That's
tell you.
all you get, guys.
That's it.
We
We tried to warn
tried.
you.
We
Okay.
tried to warn you. It's not, there's no turning back from
Ooh.
here. Nothing but bloody, gruesome details to follow.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm excited, guys. So I'm going to start with a case that is actually very near and dear to my heart because it happened in my hometown while I was still living there.
Oh.
Oh, okay.
Yes, this is a very prominent case, and there's a lot of debate even this year about it. Gypsy Rose Blanchard.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
We have been hearing about this recently.
Yes, we have, and it's been coming up in a lot of group chats I'm in, and I keep giving my 2 cents every time. So I'm ready to do it on camera officially now for everybody to hear.
Yes.
All
Bring it
right.
on.
All right. So, for those of you who don't know, Gypsy Rose Blanchard is an American woman who was convicted of second-degree murder for the 2015 death of her mother. Gypsy was subjected to years of, physical, mental, medical abuse by Dee Dee. Dee Dee basically convinced doctors, nurses, all kinds of medical staff, neighbors, friends, family that Gypsy had a lot of medical issues. She forced Gypsy Rose to be in a wheelchair. She was confined to a wheelchair. She had her on a feeding tube, even though she did not need a feeding tube.
Crazy.
Yeah, which I have no doubt seriously harmed her mental, physical
Oh, yeah.
well-being.
In
Yeah,
every way. Hmm.
Definitely.
lots of ways. Yeah, and it's just heartbreaking to think that this mother was, manipulating her own daughter and um just looking for like a plaything to take care of basically and manipulate.
Yeah, pretty
So
much.
Yep.
it's really sad. And it's also very fascinating for one reason. So I've not one reason, but my big takeaway from this case, and I'm baffled that more hasn't been done since this, but the fact that Dee Dee and Gypsy were living in the city of Springfield, Missouri, which is where I'm from. And she went to multiple doctors, different hospitals to get whatever she needed, claimed she needed from different doctors, right? Prescriptions for
Right.
pills, prescriptions for this, for that, procedure, whatever. None of these doctors communicate at all.
Right.
At all. And, they simply took Dee Dee at her word that her daughter needed these procedures based off medical history that Dee Dee basically just filled in, and they didn't look to see if that was on her file or whatever, because again, hospitals don't communicate from one hospital to another,
Which
especially
makes
if they're
no
across
sense.
state lines. Yeah, it's
And,
ridiculous.
and they definitely should. 100%. There should be some type of database that you can get in and check all that out.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to side here with the doctors for a minute. Just for a second. I'm going to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
If the parent comes in and says, these are the issues that she's been having, I've taken her to this doctor, but we moved from here, who the hell's going to think that a parent is going to lie about their kid? I wouldn't. They
I
should
know
do their
you
due
wouldn't, but
diligence.
you're a good parent. Not
Right.
everybody
I
is a
mean,
good parent.
they should do their due
That's
diligence. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, they are at fault. But
Well,
I mean,
hold on. I won't say that
fun.
the doctors themselves are at fault. I will say that the system in general is at
No,
fault.
the system. I don't mean the doctors.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean the system in general, not
Yeah.
not the doctors themselves,
Sure.
but the system itself.
Yeah. And there
As at
were a
fault.
lot of doctors that actually did look into this and tried to be like, no to Dee
Right.
Dee, but then
Mhm.
she'd go to somebody else who would do
Sure.
it. So,
Sure.
Yeah.
yeah. So it's a messed up system.
Definitely.
So, a lot of people, when they would meet Gypsy, they just naturally believed that Dee Dee was telling the truth because Gypsy has this very high-pitched, childlike voice, and she's very
Mhm.
small.
Right.
She's very short. She's very small. She has very childlike looking eyes. She met Nicholas. I can't say his last name because I literally can't pronounce it. But Nicholas G. We're just gonna call him Nick. She met him online in 2012, and they began a relationship. By 2015, they had decided they were going to kill Dee Dee. And Nick was going to help her. She provided him with a knife and basically told him to kill her mom. She claims she hid in the bathroom, and I will stand by that sentence. She claimed that she hid in the bathroom while Nick stabbed her mom 17 times. And then they fled to a motel in the city after stealing like $4,000 from her mom. And then they continued on to Wisconsin, where Nick was from. Thankfully, a neighbor that Gypsy had confided in and, revealed the identity of Nick to, the neighbor tipped the cops off. They were able to locate them in a matter of days. Basically because Gypsy had hacked her mom's Facebook page and was making posts on her mom's Facebook page that were very cryptic and strange and weird.
Mhm.
And so the cops were able to track the location based off that. So that's really cool that, Facebook worked with the cops on that, which is nice.
Oh.
Yeah.
Thanks, Zuckerberg.
Thanks. Thanks for helping us out on one of these things.
Just about. Yeah. Go ahead. I'll just be quiet about that.
We stand there with you, bud.
Yeah.
Anyways, so, the truth of Gypsy Rose's condition came out because when she ran away, she didn't take any of her medical equipment with her. And she was seen on camera walking around just fine.
Right.
So ultimately, Gypsy pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 years in prison, while Nick was sentenced to life without parole. So Nick's still in prison. And after serving only 8 years, Gypsy Rose was paroled in December of 2023. As you can imagine, her story has, attracted widespread media attention. They've had a Hulu series called The Act that dramatizes her life. Very well-written series. She's appeared in several interviews and TV shows. Often those appearances are in the same day. And in 2024, she starred in her own reality series, Gypsy Rose: Life After Lockup. Are you ready for my tangent?
Go
Yeah,
right
and
ahead.
I did not know about the reality show. I knew
I
about the
didn't
Hulu
either.
show, but wow. Okay, go girl.
There's so much more that I didn't even talk about that happened in the reality show. But here's my take. All right. Listen, abuse is never okay, especially at the hands of a parent. I myself know that better than others. However, you don't kill your parents.
Right.
I don't care what the situation is. You don't kill your parents. It's never okay to kill or hurt anyone, regardless of what
Yeah.
they've done to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's not. I understand if it's self-defense, but in this case, I don't think it was. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah.
Gypsy chose to play along to this. So you could have snuck out at any time. I mean, you're sneaking out to see this boy. You're going against your mom's wishes to, talk to these strangers online. She has a history of manipulation and lying to men. Anybody. She learned it from the best. I don't believe that Gypsy should be out already with Nick still being in prison. I don't think that it's fair to give her 10 years, let her out on good behavior, and then he's still in prison because you guys couldn't prove that she actually killed her mom. I don't buy the fact that that woman was stabbed 17 times and that daughter didn't take out some of her anger on her mom.
And I think it's really interesting because I think some people, I think some people like sympathize with her, because of what her mom put her through, because obviously that was an awful experience. But at the same time, like you said, nothing excuses murder or harming another. So, yes, like I can have empathy for what she experienced at the hands of her mom, just what her mom put her through. But yeah, she committed a crime, pretty serious one, and should still be behind bars.
Definitely agree.
You
Mom?
definitely shouldn't be rewarded for a reality TV
Right.
show about your life.
That's what I'm
Right.
saying. We're literally rewarding it and being like, yeah, I will watch that.
Yeah. I think we're all on the same page. Mom was a scumbag for doing what she did to her. I think everybody knows that. We can sympathize with what happened. But I totally agree. She should still be in prison. I personally think she should have got life just like him because whether she did the actual stabbing or not, she facilitated it.
She gave him the knife.
Yeah,
She
she
let him
gave him the
in.
knife. She let him in. She facilitated the whole thing. So
Yeah.
she's just as guilty as he is.
It
That's
wouldn't
what's
have
sickening to
happened.
me. That's what's sickening to me is the fact that she let him in.
Yeah. I'm like, who's crazier? And don't everybody jump up my rear end for using that phrase, but who's crazier? The mother for doing what she did to her, or her for plotting out the death and actually going through it? Which one of it? I mean, obviously they're both batshit crazy, but they're both nuts, but she should definitely still be in prison.
Again, the murder would not have happened if it hadn't been for Gypsy. I mean,
Right.
She's the kind of catalyst, the thing that connects everything. So
Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, she could have said to the kid, because I don't know whose idea it was, whether it was Nick's or hers. She could have said, "Listen, I'm being abused. This is this whole thing.
Save me up, get me out." Yeah.
Pick me up at midnight. I'm going to jump in your car and we're going to go to Wisconsin or Wyoming or Cuba, whatever. She didn't have to kill her. So we all think she's a bitch and should still be in prison.
Yes.
There you go.
Thankfully she is no longer in Springfield, Missouri. So
yeah, get out of there. No,
Right.
And I will not watch her reality show. I just think that says something about us as a society and a culture and a species that I don't know. It's is it rubbernecking? It's like a car crash and people just want to watch. But to me, it's I don't know. I'm not really interested in her life and how she's doing now that she's out and living her life, even though she was part of murdering her parent.
No,
And
I'm not
it's
gonna.
literally the most cringe subject matter you could imagine for that show. I assure you. I keep
Yeah,
getting people sending me stuff.
and I haven't seen it, but if it's about her everyday life now and what she's doing and all that, I wouldn't want to watch it. But if I'm not gonna lie, if she went on 2020 and was like, "I'm gonna tell you how I killed her," I'd watch it.
Yeah, well, that'd be
Yeah,
interesting.
just
Yeah,
because I'm
but she will
nosy.
never do that.
No,
Jamie, you want to tell us about your first case?
Okay, y'all. I'm going to take us to old Hollywood and we're going to talk about the mysterious death of Natalie Wood. Tragic, first of all. She was so young. She was like 43, gorgeous. And you probably know her from a movie or two, right, guys? Okay.
yeah.
So we
I'm
have
sure
Natalie.
you do.
Yeah. We have Natalie Wood, this beloved Hollywood icon. She's real glamorous and amazing. And it was November 29, 1981. And her and her husband at the time, Robert Wagner, her recent co-star, Christopher Walken, they had just been in this movie Brainstorm. They were filming it, I believe, at the time. And then there was the captain of the boat. So they all go on this boat trip near Catalina Island. And during that evening, tensions ran a little high. There were some arguments that occurred. The captain said that he heard an argument between Wagner and Wood. At some point, Wood vanished, and her body is found in the water, face down, the next day, I believe, with an inflatable dinghy nearby. The autopsy revealed alcohol, a painkiller, and a motion sickness drug in her system, but she also had bruises on her arms and legs and an abrasion on her cheek. Everybody said this was an accidental drowning. So that was kind of the official ruling for quite some time. But people have always had questions, okay? First of all, Natalie was terrified of the water. She had like an uncontrollable fear of the water. She was afraid of drowning. I've heard a couple stories about that. One was that her mom visited a fortune teller, and the fortune teller told her that Natalie would die of drowning one day. I've heard another one that her mom had like a premonition that she would drown one day. But basically, because of this belief that her mom had that Natalie would die by drowning, Natalie was always scared to drown. So one of like the main theories about what happened is that she was trying to, there's a few theories. One was that she was perhaps trying to get away from Wagner during their argument, might have slipped at that point. There's another theory that she was trying to tie up this dinghy that was kind of banging against the boat.
Mhm.
But again, it's like she wouldn't have done it. Like, she was terrified of the water. If she was really concerned about the dinghy, like, crashing around, I'm sure she would have asked somebody else to take care of it. Like the captain, her husband, or even Walken. Just giving her fear of water, it's hard for me to believe that she would have chosen to do this. In 2011, we had some more action on this. The captain changed his account, claiming that Wagner had actually delayed the search for Wood for quite a while when she went missing. He alleged that Wagner was furious and had possibly shoved her overboard during an argument and insisted they not intervene immediately. So that is what the captain said in 2011. Christopher Walken cooperated with authorities. He was never considered a suspect. But Wagner's behavior continued to draw scrutiny. In 2012, the LA County coroner actually amended Wood's cause of death to drowning and other undetermined factors, noting fresh bruises that could suggest foul play. In 2018, Wagner was actually officially named a person of interest in the case. Investigators stated he was the last one to see her and noted that the unexplained injuries, including the bruising, raised the possibility of there being an altercation. Still a lot of debate over this one, but I believe another book just came out about Natalie maybe in 2020 or something, and they talked about it even further. And again, it's saying this was not an accidental drowning. There is no way she would have put herself in the situation to drown. So that's kind of in a nutshell about Natalie. Again, I kind of lean towards thinking it was Wagner, like most people probably. They had an argument. He was the last one to see her, and she had bruises and stuff on her body. I mean, it could have happened in the water. I just think his actions were pretty suspicious, and I just don't think she would have attempted to go to the water herself. So that's Natalie.
I have
Well,
thoughts.
we never know.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
We will never know because he has come out
Yep.
many times and he won't talk about it. He
I
denies any
know.
accountability. And
Yep.
what's even more sad is the fact that her children and his believe that he's telling the truth. And I get it because you don't want to think that of your parents.
Correct.
Totally understand. It's really difficult, but from what I've done research on this. I've watched a few documentaries. Her sister, Natalie's sister, she said that, Natalie never learned how to swim because of her fear of the water.
Yep.
So I do agree. I don't think that she would have ever tried to go out in the middle of the ocean on a little dinghy by herself with no experience whatsoever. And if she was, concerned about the dinghy, she would have asked somebody else to tie it up because I'm sorry, I don't see Natalie Wood, this most elegant lady, wanting to tie up this dinghy on her own. Christopher Walken, I don't think was responsible for anything that happened to her. I believe he was still relatively new to Hollywood and was only there because Natalie insisted that he come because he didn't have anywhere to go for the holidays.
Yeah,
which I
and
think
he's
is
been
really sweet.
cooperative. Mm-hmm.
He was cooperative the whole time. I honestly, Natalie's sister has said that Natalie told her because they were married before.
Yeah, twice, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were married before and then they got divorced and then they got back together.
Yeah.
When they were married the first time, the reason they split up was because he was physically abusive to her.
Yeah.
And she even told her sister, I'm afraid that he might kill me. I don't know what more evidence you need right there. And based off of everything that we've heard and, it logically makes sense. Like, apparently Wagner and Walken got into a fight earlier in the evening.
Yep.
And they never got along. I don't think he was happy that Natalie invited him out there. And there were rumors that they might have been having an affair, which I don't think is true. But
I've heard they were a little flirtatious at times, but that can also just be friendliness, They work together and stuff, and they're on a yacht together.
I definitely think that what happened was Walken went to bed or whatever after they had their argument, and then Wagner got into a fight with Natalie, and it may have been an accident. I don't think he intentionally wanted to hurt her starting out, but he did have a temper on him. So, yeah. And again, we'll never know.
We will never know.
We'll definitely never know. I've also, researched it and looked at all the documentaries and stuff, and all the circumstantial evidence would point to it was the hubby.
Oh, yeah.
So we can think what we want, but there's no direct evidence saying that it was him. So his kids and everything believing him, they want to believe him. I mean,
of course.
I mean, it was like OJ's kids. They didn't want to believe that, daddy cut mommy's head off. Of course, you're going to want to believe the other parent. So,
of course. Especially when all your memories are of them being happy together. Sure. Of course, that's what you want to believe.
Absolutely. That's what they would want to believe. So if I were looking at it just like we are now, I would say, yeah, he did it. But if I was on a jury, he would be let go because there's not enough evidence there's only circumstantial evidence. It doesn't matter if he beat her up 37 times and people seen it. Okay, well, that doesn't mean he did it now. He was an a-hole, yes, but that doesn't mean he did it. So,
it's true. Yeah.
That's kind of where I stand with that one.
Yeah, it's true. And, it's like, that's part of why I think we'll never really know, because it's not like he's going to talk It sounds like the people who've already talked have said what they're going to say. I mean, the captain has talked on multiple occasions. Walken was cooperative. So,
I don't think he has anything to add. I
yeah,
really don't.
exactly.
Yeah.
He doesn't. And then it's like, there's not, I don't imagine that there's any kind of evidence now that they could possibly find. You know what I mean? So, especially with these older cases, it's like, how would you even go about potentially finding something to solve this at this point, unless somebody dropped a knowledge bomb? And there's really only one person who could, because those were the only people who were there.
Yeah, I'm like, unless we get a deathbed confession,
yeah,
it'll never happen.
And it's not gonna happen.
All right, Ethan.
All right, kids. I would like you all to grab your cowboy hats, your AK-47s, and your Bibles, and come with me because we are going to Waco, Texas.
Yeehaw!
All right, we're going to talk about the wacko from Waco, David Koresh. Yes, I'm doing a religious zealot. I know everybody's shocked.
I love it.
Okay, David Koresh was originally born Vernon Wayne Howell, and he took over the Branch Davidians, which was a sect of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, in 1987. When he started in 1987, he was crazy, but he wasn't spouting his craziness yet.
Okay.
Yet. He was preaching. He was very energetic. He got people to listen to him. He was a very good speaker. I don't know if you've ever heard any of his sermons or any of that.
Yeah.
He's a very dynamic speaker. I could listen to him until he started getting crazy.
Yeah.
In the early 1990s, there were some allegations of polygamy and child abuse and stockpiling weapons, which, of course, these came from former members who had left or had been thrown out. And the reason that they had been thrown out and ex-members is because he started taking the scriptures and twisting them. And when I say twisting them, he was totally manipulating them and saying that he was like the last prophet of Christ, and then he was the reincarnation of Christ. And I'm like, I'm going to have to stand on my Christian faith here for a second. People, do you read your own Bible? Jesus is coming back, but not like that. So if it doesn't line up, you should have ran. So there were some people who ran and was like, we're done with this. This guy's crazy. They started saying, here, this is what happened, because even before he became, the head of this sect, he had some issues with, he was 18 and was with a 15-year-old. And so they found out about that and they were like, no, we got to go. So Vernon Howell, he did change his name to David Koresh. And the reason that he went for David Koresh, he picked David because King David in the Bible, Jesus came from the house and lineage of David. So that was his way of saying he was the new Messiah.
Yeah.
And yes, and Koresh in the biblical name is a Persian king named for freeing the Jews from captivity. So that's where he got that from. They began to observe not only Christian faith, but Jewish holidays, and it was very Jewish centered along with Christianity, which is fine. But then he started twisting everything, and he began to tell people that other than, he was Christ, he began to tell the guys that they couldn't have sex with their wives, and their wives were now his wives, and their kids were now his wives. And, all kinds of just crazy stuff. So
it's like, whoa, slow down, man.
Right. So in February of 1993, the FBI and the ATF raided the compound, and they had a 51-day standoff with David Koresh and his followers. There were many children and women inside the compound, and they would not let them leave. They were trying to negotiate for them to leave, but of course, this crazy dude was not going to let them leave. The Justice Department should have actually been the ones. This is where people are now upset with the government. The Justice Department should have been the one who was taking care of the allegations of, the children being molested and raped and all that stuff. But the ATF was already there, so they kind of were taking lead of things. But the ATF was there because they were stockpiling weapons, because he was also preaching the book of Revelation, which has nothing to do with this, but the end of the world apocalypse, and everybody's going to be against them. So they had to, have their compound, and anybody who was coming in there, they were going to have to kill. So, hold on one second. April 19th, 1993, U.S. Attorney General Janet Reno gave the go-ahead for the final go-ahead to go ahead and go in there, and they weren't letting people out. So it had been 51 days. She said, go in there. They started shooting some tear gas and stuff in there. They had basically tanks is what it was.
There's no basically, they were tanks.
Basically they were tanks, the Humvees and stuff, and they were going in there. They don't know if we set, and I say we, the government set the place on fire, or if they set the place on fire, but there was a big explosion. And in this whole thing, David Koresh was shot, and he was very badly injured. So after the explosion and everything, 79 Branch Davidians were dead. I believe it was 6 FBI agents, and many, many, many more were wounded. 21 of the 79 were kids under the age of 16 years old. Now, David Koresh and many other people were found not only burnt, but they were found shot. Now, there's a little discrepancy on whether they shot themselves, or if like the deacons of the church finally said, okay, this guy's crazy, and they shot him, started shooting other people, shot themselves. But there was one child who was 4 years old who was stabbed to death prior to
burning
the fire. So obviously this dude was crazier than a shithouse rat. There's a lot of controversy with this, obviously the whole cult thing, but there's a lot of controversy on if the government was at fault or if they were at fault. So let me go ahead and get you guys' opinion on, first of all, David Koresh and his craziness, and then do you think the government was at fault? And if you think the government was at fault, why do you think the government was at fault? What do you think they should have done differently?
Gosh.
Nina?
No, let's Jamie go first.
Go ahead.
I'm like, I feel like they should have handled it differently, but I don't know exactly how to have handled it differently. But something seems like it could have been handled differently there. Okay. Because it's just a massive amount of people to lose their lives, the explosion, the fire. But again, how? I don't really know. I don't really know how I would have handled the situation, to be honest.
Okay. First off, I would highly encourage anybody who wants to know more about this incident to watch the miniseries from Showtime called Waco. It's very informative, and it shows everybody's perspectives, not just one side. Yep. So that's a really good show. Your first question, I think, was David Koresh and how crazy he is. Yes, he was.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't agree with anything that he said, other than, there are women and children here. Back up.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's about where I end with my, alignment with him. But yes, he was crazy. What he was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
I will give the federal government that. Yes. Don't stockpile weapons. Don't buy weapons from gun shows and modify them. You're not allowed to do that. Mm-hmm. You're also not allowed to have sex with children.
Yes.
Correct.
As far as where was the government right? I do think that the government has the right to step in on certain occasions. I don't think it should have gotten to the ATF.
Yeah.
I think that the sex stuff probably should have caused the government to react a little bit sooner. However, Koresh and his followers were very careful about where they picked their location for their compound.
Correct.
And Texas is very much a live and let live kind of state. They were still trying to navigate the whole sexual predator thing, even in the 90s. It was still in its early stages of development in terms of that,
True.
which is unfortunate. And there were a lot of cults in Texas around this time that, didn't have or were able to get away with a lot because of this. But I think that the biggest issue with the government's reaction was the fact that they didn't train their people very well, honestly, for this kind of situation, because how often have we seen this kind of situation? But from my understanding and my research, the biggest issue was we had a lot of tactical military people not knowing how to communicate with the peace negotiators and vice versa. You'd have like 2 or 3 days of people trying to calmly talk to David Koresh and his followers. And then you'd have the military tactical people having sirens going and loud music and all that kind of like, I don't know the word for it, but it's basically used in warfare to like convince your enemies to like stand down or surrender, basically. And they've proven that this doesn't work. These tactics don't work. They only make your opponent more aggressive because they're not getting sleep or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that was the biggest issue, was that there just wasn't enough communication amongst all the people that were involved.
Okay.
Well
and it's
said.
unfortunate because a lot of innocent people died. And it also led to another crime a year later in Oklahoma.
Yes.
The Oklahoma City bombing, and that is actually the reason why my family moved out of Oklahoma.
Wow.
Yep. So I do have pictures of the site where the building used to stand, because when I went to Texas for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre filming locations, I also visited Waco. And you can still go there, and there are still Branch Davidians that live there.
Oh, yeah.
And you can visit and offer a donation to see, but the building is gone. It's very peaceful. Yeah. They do have a memorial there. So
yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think the Branch Davidians, I don't think that they're crazy just because he was.
No.
I just want to put that out. I just want to put that out there. So
now there were some that were.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Crazy.
No, there are some crazy. I'm not saying that, but I don't think on a whole, just like I don't think all Catholic people are bad, or all Pentecostal people are bad, or all atheist people are bad. There's bad in every group. So I don't, just because you're a Branch Davidian doesn't mean that I think you're, a lunatic.
It also didn't help that David Koresh was telling them that, the government's going to come in and like attack us all. Correct. And they did. And it's basically fulfilling prophecy. And you're like, oh, Koresh was right the whole time.
Yeah.
That does not help anybody's case.
No.
No, not at all. As far as him and his craziness, please don't just listen to people. Do your own research. Specifically, I'm going to have to go with biblical cults. If it doesn't line up with the Bible, leave. This guy is clearly crazy. He is not Jesus. And even if he was Jesus, if he said, I am God and I'm going to sleep with your 13-year-old daughter, I'm going to knock God out and we're going to leave. So that's not happening. So I get it. Cults are a big thing. They get into your head, whatever, but I'm like, you're still a parent. So whatever. As far as the government's issue, I guess the Justice Department had been looking into these allegations, and they had gone there to try to talk to them, but of course they wouldn't let them on the property. So they were doing their investigations about all that good jazz. I say all that good jazz. I don't mean a bit like that, but they were doing their investigations. Now, they couldn't just bust in there because then, everybody's civil rights and, I get it. You got to do things in order. But when they had the stockpile of the weapons, that's when the ATF was there and they came behind them and the ATF was already there. So they were the ones who were leading it. Do I have an issue with the way that it was done. This is going to be a little controversial. I do.
Controversial?
What?
I do. It was a 51-day standoff. I think it was about 46 days too long.
Yeah.
I think they played and played and played. Listen, I told you to do something. I know that there's people in here. We're going to go in and get them. Listen, that's the, I hate to say that's the chance you're going to take. But if you're in a cult and you got your kids in this cult and you got them in this building, if I know stuff's coming, I'm coming to get you. And I hate to say collateral damage, but it should not have taken 51 days. That's the only thing that I think. It should have been a whole hell of a lot shorter. It may have ended the same way, or it may not have. But I think it took way too long. I don't think it should have taken 51 days.
Yeah.
That's a long time. You'd think they could expedite something serious.
Yeah. I'm like, here, let them out. If you don't let them out, we're coming in.
Yeah.
End of story.
Not up for debate. Yeah.
It does not take me 51 days to do this. Let the women and children out. Or if the women want to stay there, let the children out.
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't want to let your kids out and something happens to them, that's not my fault. That's not the government's fault. That's your fault. So,
unfortunately.
Yep.
Yeah. That is the saddest part to me is the kids, you know, it's just
absolutely.
I just wish at least, you know, the kids could have been spared there.
And I guess, if I'm not mistaken, they were going to let them out at one time. And
I think that's what I've read.
When they actually started to leave, and then I don't know what happened, but they all went back in. So
I don't know exactly what happened in that situation, but I know there were children that did get out, and there were several parents that left too. They were splitting them up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they found out about that, and they didn't like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, they were keeping the parents away from the kids because obviously you let your kids into a cult and there's potential sexual abuse charges here. Right. So they had to separate them. They would still let them visit, but it was supervised. Like, what do you expect?
As it should be.
Yeah.
All right, kids, that's the wacko from Waco.
Right. We're going to continue. Yeah, I'm going to continue with my theme of like crappy parents, I guess. And I'm going to do the case of JonBenét Ramsey. Ooh. So this one has been with me like ever since I could remember. I've heard her name. So John and Patsy Ramsey, they had 2 children, Burke and JonBenét. JonBenét was a child pageant star. I guess you'd say her mother was a former beauty pageant queen, and she got her daughter into doing the same thing. And there's lots of controversy over that. We won't get into that. But they, on Christmas night, 1996, John and Patsy were coming home from a Christmas party. 6-year-old JonBenét, she fell asleep in the car, and her parents carried her into the house and up the stairs to her bedroom. John and Patsy went to bed soon after, as they planned to rise early and prepare for a trip to their second home in Lake Michigan because they're well off and they're not normal people. I'm just going to put that out there right now. Right. They have lots of money. John and Patsy Ramsey called the police at 5 a.m. on the morning of December 26th to report that their daughter was missing. The police found a ransom note demanding $118,000. However, the money wasn't ever going to be needed because they ended up finding JonBenét's body under a blanket in the basement that afternoon. JonBenét had been beaten and strangled. She was found with tape over her mouth and her hands tied together with a cord. There were also some signs of sexual assault. Overall, the Boulder detectives, they did a very poor job of preserving the evidence. They actually allowed John Ramsey to disrupt the crime scene and remove his daughter's body from the basement, which is ridiculous to me, but yeah. Friends, family, and neighbors were also allowed to enter and leave at whenever they felt like it, throughout the
Lax.
entire day while the police were performing an investigation within the house.
Does not make sense.
Not at all.
No,
That's not how
No.
you run a crime scene, guys. Like, what the?
literally entering, leaving at will. No one was
Wow.
restrained from coming in. No one was restrained from coming out. God only knows what they got out of that house. But yeah, there was no signs of an intruder, like, no forced entry at any place in that house. Suspicion obviously quickly fell on JonBenét's parents. The ransom note seemed very suspicious to the authorities. April 30th, 1997, police conduct their first formal interviews with John and Patsy Ramsey. Now, keep in mind, she died December 26th. They didn't interview them until April 30th the following year.
Wow. They're like, go ahead and walk through the crime scene and then have some
Right.
fun, and we'll talk to
Continue
you
to
in,
live
I don't
there.
know, like a while. We'll talk to you in some months from now.
Yeah. The Boulder police make a public statement in December of 97 that the Ramsey parents remain suspects. January 15th, 1998, the parents declined to participate in a second interview with detectives, saying they won't cooperate unless police allow them to review the evidence in the case. What are you smoking? October 13th, 1999, the Boulder County DA Alex Hunter states that no indictments will be issued due to lack of evidence in the case. June 24th, 2006, Patsy Ramsey dies of ovarian cancer. So if she did it, you guys will never be able to charge her for it.
Right.
August 16th that same year, officials announced that 41-year-old John Mark Carr has been arrested in Bangkok, Thailand as a suspect in the case. He allegedly told an American investigator that he drugged JonBenet and sexually assaulted her before accidentally killing her. However, the case was dropped after DNA tests failed to link him to the crime scene. In 2008, Boulder County District Attorney Mary Lacey says no one in the Ramsey family is considered a suspect and formally apologizes in a letter to John Ramsey. As of December 2023, the Boulder Police Department has followed up on more than 21,000 tips, letters, and emails and interviewed over 1,000 people in connection with the case. The case has been reviewed by federal, state, and local partners as well as DNA experts. In December of 2023, the Boulder Police Department convened a panel of outside experts to review the case and determine if new technologies or forensic testing could help. And as of recording this, this documentary is actually coming out tomorrow. But Academy Award nominated director Joe Berlinger is examining the case in a 3-part Netflix docuseries, Cold Case: Who Killed JonBenet. The series focuses on law enforcement and media missteps and asks if authorities will take action to solve the case. So, as of right now, the case remains unsolved.
Wow.
Now,
That's some shoddy police work.
but I want to ask you guys, who do you think killed JonBenet? I know they bring this up every Christmas.
Honestly, I have no idea.
Really? Wow.
No,
Yeah.
I have no idea. And I would hate to say, well, I think it was the brother or I think it was the parents, because number one, I couldn't ever fathom doing that to your child or, to
Yeah.
a sibling. But there's no evidence because the police screwed everything up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously the police didn't do it, but the police are the reason that we don't know who did.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So I honestly, I have no idea who did it.
Yeah, like you said, of course, it's hard to say like they did it, if they didn't do
Right.
it. But it's like, I don't know. There's so many weird things about this, like with the ransom note and all the items inside that were related to that ransom note. For me, it has always felt like it was probably the parents or the dad, but I don't know. It's hard to say, but there are some there were some weird things with this case, particularly like the ransom note and the fact that she was in the house. Yeah, there's some weird stuff there. What do you think, Nina?
I'm right there with you guys, to be honest. I don't know. I don't think we'll ever know. The problem is the main problem is that the Boulder Police Department fucked up. Like
Right.
that's the main problem. The second main
Yeah.
problem is that, the parents and family stopped cooperating after like 6 months. So, and they were just very difficult. They weren't cooperative really from day one. And they had a history of omitting truths or, giving half truths. So that doesn't help either. Do I think they did it? I don't know. It's a possibility.
But
But
I have to say this.
there's a lot of points that come up that it's like,
Right. But if if there was a murder at my house or whatever, okay, right? And the police came in and screwed it all up like this. And then I was trying to help them as much as I can. I gave them a half truth or what. Not that I was intentionally lying, but I'm not in the right mind frame. I may have. I don't know what the hell
Sure.
happened. I don't know where I was at 2:30. If you're then going to start accusing me and saying, "Well, you did it," or "Your wife did it," or I'm done helping you. I'm done.
Yeah.
You get
And
your own damn
also,
proof. I'll get a lawyer, and especially if I didn't do anything.
oh yeah,
Sure.
Screw you.
I mean, there was a lot of instances where they just weren't keeping the family up to date on what was going on in the investigation, which is
Right.
kind of insulting. Like,
It's
not kind of,
horrible.
it is. Yeah.
Right.
And like I said, there's a lot of evidence that they don't really talk about very often that proves that the Ramseys didn't do it.
Right.
Like a
It's
lot of
true.
evidence. So again, it's one of those I don't think we'll ever know, unfortunately, which is sad. But
Yep.
I
the people who
know.
do know, and that's, I
That is
guess,
true.
yeah,
It's like
they
I
will
hope.
answer for it.
Yeah, hopefully one day somebody says something. I don't know, because it's like this is a child, that's the part that's so sad is she's so young, like what, like 6? Is that what we said? 6?
6, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So.
really sad.
I mean, I'm interested to see what the Netflix episode talks about. Like,
definitely.
if they're looking into some different leads, if they're looking into some of the evidence that's not discussed as much. I'm sure they're going to kind of try to do a deep dive on some of that stuff. So I'm curious to see what they talk about.
Yeah, I definitely think they should refocus on the suspect list. But the problem is there were so many people coming and going. They don't even know who was in that house and who wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much that they could have snuck out.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, if the family did it, they had so many opportunities to get rid of things. So, like, why would
True.
you leave the bowl of pineapple on the kitchen table?
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, do you know if the family ever pressed any kind of charges against the police for like the police work that they did?
I don't know if they pressed any charges against the police department. I know that there were several news outlets that
Right.
accused the family, including the brother. They, like, I think it was ABC specifically accused the brother at one point recently, and
Yeah.
he did file a defamation case.
Yeah.
As
And
he should
they,
have.
yes,
Yeah, for
and the
sure.
father followed and did the same thing as well. And I think they
Settled.
got it dismissed out of court. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
I can't believe the news would make something up, though. So that was sarcasm, kids.
They never do that.
Yeah.
listen, you can say you
Not-
suspect somebody, but you don't ever say,
That's exactly it. You could
unless you
say,
have
here, the
proof.
evidence is pointing this way, and I
Also,
suspect it.
yeah. Also, like, words really matter when you're talking about crimes, when you're reporting crimes. There's a huge difference between, somebody being accused, somebody being charged. Like, there's so many, you have to be very careful and very accurate. They mean very different things.
But you're an ethical
Absolutely.
journalist, which
Yes.
there aren't many of you. So
There there could be more.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Get it
Help us
together,
out
Barbara
here.
Walters. No.
All right. Are you guys ready to get into just a gnarly killer here? All right. You guys ready to get a little bit of everything here with this guy? I'm talking like drug crime. I'm talking like cults. I'm talking black magic. I'm talking human sacrifice. I'm about to get into the horrible tale of Adolfo de Jesus Costanzo. Okay. So I first want to say I picked this case because when I first learned about this guy, I'd never heard about him before. There's 16 confirmed deaths related to him, suspected 26, so they suspect even more. And so I just thought this case has like lots of compelling stuff going on in it. Like I said, it's got voodoo, it's got a poor college student getting put into the mix, and just some horrible stuff. So trigger warning, and sorry to the victims because it's rough. Okay. So Mark Kilroy was a University of Texas student, an all-around good guy. Him and his friends decided to go to Matamoros, Mexico in 1989 for spring break. Very popular place for spring break for college students. So tons of turistas and Americans there. One night they decided to walk across to Mexico. They were in Texas to Mexico. And, partying with the other spring breakers. Mark ends up going and saying goodbye to a woman that they met. Next thing his friends know, Mark is gone. They can't find him anywhere. They looked all night for him, searched all night, couldn't find him. They decide to walk back across the border thinking Mark went back. But come the next day, Mark is still not back. They start to worry. They contact the police, and an investigation immediately starts. Around this time, Matamoros, Mexico had already seen 60 disappearances in the first 3 months of 1989. So a lot of people were going missing in this area at the time. Initially, investigators on the Mexican side and Texas side were thinking that he had maybe been kidnapped for a ransom. But when no ransom note came, they assumed that he probably got caught up in something he shouldn't have got caught up in, and that they'd probably be looking for a body. This was even featured on America's Most Wanted, but no credible leads came in to help them with the case at all. It wasn't until April 1st that when they were doing a drug check, a suspicious vehicle took off to this remote ranch, and police decided to follow it. Once they got to this ranch, they basically uncovered some seriously unspeakable stuff, and it ended up being one of the most shocking cases of ritualistic murder in history. The ranch belonged to a cult led by Adolfo de Jesus Costanzo, a charismatic yet deeply twisted figure. He was a practitioner of Palo Mayombre, which is a really dark offshoot of Santeria. I've read a little bit about it, and it involves a lot of like human and animal sacrifice. So it's a pretty bad one. Costanzo's grew up in this world. His mom and his grandmother were both priestesses or practitioners of this. And he was also a really, really big deal drug smuggler. So he was running a really, really big drug operation. And what we would later find out is that he took down many of his rivals in that world because he believed that human sacrifice made him stronger. Turns out that Mark Kilroy, the college student, fit the profile for what he was looking for a particular sacrifice. Mark was abducted, taken to the ranch, subjected to horrible torture, and Costanzo ultimately killed him with a machete blow to the neck. The thing that was really wild is when police discovered the scene, they found what's called a naganda, which is like a ritual pot. It contained organs, animal remains, nails, like crazy stuff in it. They had never really seen anything like that before. They raided the ranch and ultimately found like 15 bodies buried on site, who were all murdered by this guy and his cult of followers. The sacrifices, he claimed, ensured strength, wealth, and immunity from harm for him and his followers. There was a big manhunt that went down trying to find Costanzo, and it eventually ended up in Costanzo having one of his cult members shoot him. So he was never brought to justice, committed suicide. So the murder of Mark Kilroy was truly chilling. It kind of is at this intersection of true crime, occult practices, and the brutality of cartel culture. It was a really, really widely publicized case. The U.S. government, Mexican government worked pretty closely to try and solve this one. Mark was born in Chicago, and people from around his hometown actually went out to Matamoros to try to help find him. But yeah, that's a little bit about, they called him El Padrino as well, the Godfather. So I chose this one because I thought it was crazy. I'd never heard of this guy before. It has so many like crazy elements to it with the occult, with the cartel behavior, and then this poor college student who just kind of got in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Right.
I have a question, and you may not know the answer, and that's okay. Was he killing? You said he was killing people because he thought it made him stronger. Did he pick people that physically looked strong,
So
or it didn't matter?
Didn't really matter. He thought that somebody like Mark was kind of perfect. He thought he was like a good option for that because Mark's this all-American guy. He's not from there. He's white. But most of the people he killed were rivals in the drug trade, rivals in the drug cartel, maybe even people who got on the wrong side of some of his associates. And he thought, he thought sacrificing them would make him stronger. So just thought sacrifice in general would do the job.
Well, surprise, it doesn't.
No.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And you were saying, Jamie, that there is a horror movie that is loosely based on this?
Yeah, so I have never seen it before. It's called Borderland, and apparently it's based slightly on this. I don't know how closely it's tied to it, but reading the description briefly, it has to do with a drug lord who does human sacrifices. And it is in a border town. So that is apparently based off of him. I did see an episode when I first learned about him. I saw an episode of a true crime show that featured him. And honestly, the weird way that I came to that is I was watching that show Oddities. Have you guys ever seen that?
I have not seen it yet.
Okay, so it's a show about an oddity shop. I think it's in New York somewhere. They get really weird items that come in. And there was an episode where a man from New Jersey had bought a storage unit, and he found an item inside and had no idea what it was. It was this big, round, like pot, but it was sealed shut. It was heavy. It had chains wrapped around it. He had no idea what it was. He brought it to them. They were like, we don't know what it is. We're kind of weirded out, but let's see what we can find out. They brought it to some different experts. One lady was like, this is bad stuff. This is bad magic. They ended up like doing an x-ray and saw inside of it. It had nails. It had thorns. It had feathers. And that is one of these, it's this pot thing that this killer would put body parts and animal remains, and it's a black magic thing. So when I learned about that, I was like, that's crazy. And when I looked it up, it led me right to this guy. So
wow. Okay.
Yep.
Very interesting.
Just a gnarly case that I'd never heard about him before, and pretty prolific killer. Again, lots of people died and were found on his ranch. I'm
gonna have to do some more study on that.
Yeah, I'll have to watch the movie. And if anybody's seen Borderland, I can kind of picture the cover. If you've seen it, let me know what you thought. And there's a little bit of the real life inspiration on it.
I'm definitely have to watch that. I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Are we ready for my next one?
Yeah. Let's get into this Kool-Aid.
All right, kids. Grab your Bible and pour yourself a glass of Kool-Aid because we are talking about the Reverend Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre.
Purple drink.
Yes, purple drink. I believe theirs was red drink, but same difference.
Right.
Anyway, Jim Jones was the leader, the pastor, the reverend, whatever you want to call him, of the People's Temple from 1955 to 1978. It is a mass murder / mass suicide. I'm going to go back just a little bit and hit a little bit. I learned some things about him growing up that I did not know. He was, according to his family and neighbors, he was an unusual child who was obsessed with religion and death. He would hold funerals for roadkill that he found and make the kids from the neighborhood come to the service for the dead roadkill.
That's sweet.
I was going to say,
Not strange at all. That was sarcasm.
No.
That is not
No. Growing up, he studied Hitler, Stalin, Marx, and Gandhi. I'm like, well, that certainly.
So many red flags already.
I'm like, certainly we can see that this is going in a negative way here.
Don't know what you mean.
Right?
Yeah.
Idolizing Hitler, nothing wrong with that.
I think he's probably just well read.
Right? A couple of other things that they said that he did. He committed countless sacrilegious acts through several churches while he was growing up, whether they were his church or not. He once went into an apostolic Pentecostal church and stole the pastor's Bible and opened it up to Acts 2:38, which is the mission statement for the apostolic church, and smeared cow manure all over it. And then he went into a Catholic church and stole their holy water and replaced it with his urine. So,
oh my.
Obviously, he's had
religion whatsoever.
Right. So, me calling him Reverend Jim Jones is.
We're just going to call him Jim.
Yeah, we're just going to call
Jim
him.
J.
We're just going to call him Jim. So,
JJ.
Yeah, JJ.
Exactly. Well, in 1952, he actually became an ordained Methodist minister. And he said that he was not only preaching the gospel, but he was there to put socialism into practice.
Hey.
I'll just go on with that. In 1953, he left the Methodist Church because he had gone to a Pentecostal service, and a prophetess there was like, I see something in you. And he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to become a Pentecostal minister. So he became a Pentecostal minister with the Assemblies of God in 1953. Shortly after that, the Assemblies of God organization said, no, you're not. You're crazy. This ain't got nothing to do with Jesus. You got to go. No, please, you got to leave. So he left Pentecostalism and he joined the Disciples of Christ. I couldn't find too much what the Disciples of Christ were, but I think that's pretty much you just go there and you can preach whatever you want. And they just kind of throw Reverend on it and you can preach whatever you want. So anyway, that was a little bit of his growing up story to where he got to where he was. So now he's started this church where he is teaching. At first, he is teaching straight Christianity and racial reconciliation, and he's rolling it into social justice and all of that. But he hasn't began to put his crazy Marxism and communism and all of that good stuff in there. He went from his church in Indiana, Indianapolis, Indiana, is where his first, where the big People's Temple was. they had then moved from there to California. When they moved to California, he kind of began to start preaching the right stuff, but then he started integrating stuff into it, the Marxism and the communist type of way. And, Whitey was bad, and he and his wife had adopted a bunch of children that were of different races, which is a wonderful thing. But he said that his family was the rainbow family, and that's how everything should be. And I do agree with that part. Everybody should be equal. He got that right. That's about all he ever got right. But he got that right. So he then started teaching. Some people were like, no, this whole Marxist stuff, I got to go. This ain't for me. So, but he began to build the church up. He then started saying that there was going to be a nuclear blast that came into Indiana and killed everybody and blah, blah, blah. So he was supposed to go find another place for them to be. And he had read an article that it was South Africa was the safest place. He also began to say that Christianity, mainstream Christianity, was wrong. And it's only what he preached. And that the God, they referred to him as Sky God or No God because there was no God. He then said that he was God. You see how the crazy people are saying that they're God and people are still following him. Anyway, when he went over there, the church kind of dwindled. And there was a big church divide, and there was like 100 people when he got back. So he worked it back up to, I believe it was 900 and some people, almost 1,000 people. Said, okay, we're going over to Ghana, South Africa. We're going to start this little commune. We're all going to live together because this is going to happen. In the meantime, some people decided they were leaving, but 909 people went over there.
Yeah.
And they were over there. They wouldn't let them leave. Of course, it was, oh, come on, everything will be great. But when they got over there, he started back up with this crap and, wouldn't let anybody leave. And there were allegations of, trafficking, not letting people out. So somebody who was still in the States, who I believe whose sister was there, the sister called and said, I need out of here. You need to help me. So she went to our government. Our government sent, let me see if I can find his name. Congressman Ryan over there, and him and his delegation went on a fact-finding mission to see if they were just really a bunch of people over there who were just, if they were there of their own fruition or if they could leave. So they went over there on a fact-finding mission. They didn't really find too much because, everybody was putting on this big front because the congregation couldn't necessarily tell them because they said, if you do, we're going to kill you because they weren't letting them leave. So I guess when they were leaving, apparently somebody slipped him a note that said, you got to get it, pretty much you got to get us out of here. We're being held against our will, whatever.
Yeah,
so,
help us.
Exactly. So as they were leaving, him and his delegation, the deacons of the church or the hierarchy of the church were taking them to their plane. They had set up with Jim Jones that as they were going to get on their plane, they were just going to let them go and that was going to be it. But they overheard them talking, saying that, they're going to go to the government and they're going to bring them back here. So they started killing the delegation and shooting them right there. So they reported that back to Jim Jones. Jim Jones was like, all right, the gig's up. It's now time. Now, of course, Jim Jones, I forgot to mention this, not only was he God, but he was also tripping balls because he was doing hallucinogenic drugs too. So he was tripping out too. So now he's really, really crazy and on drugs. So he said, okay, they laced the Kool-Aid. Actually, it wasn't Kool-Aid, it was Flavor Aid. they laced it with cyanide. And he said, okay, now's the time. Everybody's, we got to drink this and everybody's going to die at the same time. And if you would not drink it, then you got shot in the head. So you either got killed or you killed yourself. Well, unfortunately, 909 people died there. So if you ever heard anybody say, don't drink the Kool-Aid, that's where that's from. So,
Yeah.
And there are many, many, many other things that I was telling Jamie. I literally had 9 pages of notes. I just tried to hit the highlights because I think I've watched every documentary and everything about him just because, you know.
No, I had a hard time with mine.
I don't want to say it's fascinating because obviously I wish none of it would have ever happened, but
it's tragic, and that's what attracts us to it.
It's tragic, but it is fascinating to see, number one, how people could believe half of this crap. Now, I'm sure that these people were fed, not all of them were fed the BS. They were fed a whole different meal till they got there.
Yeah.
And when they got there, it was like, oh crap, what do we do now? So
that's what I understand from what I've read. Yeah, it seems like a lot of manipulation tactics, and they had no hope of ever leaving. And unfortunately, before somebody could rescue them, they died. So it's very sad. Very sad.
I know so many people. It's such a huge amount of people.
Yeah.
And it's very haunting, I guess you'd say, the footage of them coming back and you see the video of them just panning over all of them. Like,
oh God, yeah.
It's
so
haunting is a good word.
Yeah. All right.
And David Koresh and Jim Jones as a Christian, I have to say, you give us a bad name. That's not real Christianity, kids. Those people are crazy. So
yeah.
If I had $1 for every time somebody asked me if I was part of the Koresh cult, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
No.
It's like, no.
Like, that's not it at all. So
Yep, that's been true crime. We're hoping to do more of this, so let us know what you think. If you like this format where we just go around talking about different cases, great. If you want us to focus on specific cases and go into more detail, we are happy to do that too. So just let us know what you guys think. I personally like the open conversation, but I know it's not for everybody. Some people want all the gory details, and it's like, we could do that, but so many other podcasts do that, and it's like there's so much information out there. Like, we'd rather just encourage you to go do your own research, like what we do. So.
And if there's anybody that you want us to do, if there's a true crime case that you want us to do, let us know.
Yeah.
There were a couple cases I was looking into that didn't necessarily, like, there was no crime technically, but on paper, but there's thoughts and everything that there were. But it's true crime is a rabbit hole that I enjoy falling into sometimes.
Me too.
Me too.
All right, guys, just remember, if you ever find yourself in a horror movie or in a real life horror movie, just remember, don't have sex.
Don't do drugs or the Flavor Aid.
And certainly don't die. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.